Let's get started. But before we begin, let me tell you a short story about the brand that no one understood anymore. This brand asked the public what words came to mind when they heard the brand name. And this, on the screen, is what they said. This is a great start to understanding your brand. At least we thought so. But in this case, as a post-secondary institution, the fact that programs, learning, classes, training all showed up was, well, a no-brainer. If they hadn't, that would have been a problem, wouldn't it? But is this really a competitive advantage? Only if they're competing against, say, chips or underwear. So yes, it's good. They are known for programs, but wouldn't all of their competitive set be? Well, there's hope, right? Hands-on, practical experience, small classes. These are all good categories to compete on, right? Everyone got excited. Then they took a look around, and it seems every institution saw the same opportunity or saw it as their competitive advantage. And every ad, viewbook, info session reported that their institution had hands-on, practical learning, work experience, and small classes. Okay, so if it's not going to work with that, what about their other claims to fame? The trades, apprenticeships, and oil and gas. Those programs had certainly been their breadwinners in the past. Yes, these are unique in their competitive set, so that gave them some hope until they realized that those programs are struggling to attract students across the country, not just here. That overall there's less demand for these in the current form. Are they important? Absolutely, yes, they are. But what brand wants to attach themselves to just this when they're in trouble right now? Oh, but here are a few others that are unique. Culinary, cooking, and sports. But even those are challenging during the current pandemic. And what? Arts? We don't even teach that. And then the brand manager noticed another word that was even more problematic. Good. What does that even mean? Does it mean not great? Does it mean good enough? Does it mean the education is good or the facilities or the career chances are good? And seriously, of all the words that could be used to describe an institution, good is what came to mind. Well, the institution surely shouldn't put that on a billboard, should they? This is a story about being good. Hi, I'm Lindsay Fair. I'm the Associate Vice President of SAIT, which is the Southern Alberta Institute of Technology. 2 years ago, I moved from Queen's University, where I was the Director of Marketing, Communications, and Recruitment for Arts and Science, to here. I'm also currently a PhD candidate at Queen's in Urban Geography, and I'm studying how user-generated content is impacting place branding. As a higher ed marketer in today's world, like many of you, I understand the hyper-competitive market, the crowded marketplace, and the lack of differentiation between our intangible reality. I think this quote by Bowman really sums up the reality that our higher ed Marcom teams live every day. Don't you? This is why I believe understanding our brand first, finding what does make us actually unique, and creating institutional cohesion is our only chance for survival in the future. And that's what I hope to shed some light on today. In this 40-minute session, I will share with you, through my current work at SAIT as the case study, 1, how to tell if you're in a state of chaos or cohesion. 2, what would people say if we ask them? Do they say things that are unified? Is it what you actually want them to say? And then, what unique thing do you want them to say? And lastly, how to create a brand playbook, strategic messaging framework. Okay, so here's the start of your homework. Yes, there are more sophisticated ways to do this, but this is low cost, fast, and usually ends up in a, oh, really? So take the last 10 social posts, doesn't have to be exactly 10, your last 2 home pages, take a screenshot, a few reviews, whether that's Google reviews or other forms of reviews, your description on any third-party website, whether that's Wikipedia or something else, the profile of your most prolific faculty member on their own website. What do they say? And then the intro from your last media interview, not the part that you spoke about or that your SME spoke about, but rather how the media introduced your clip. Put them all together. What words do you see coming up over and over? Do your own word cloud of it. Now do a separate one for each of your stakeholder groups. One to see what students would say, and one to see what staff would say, or one for faculty, one for media in general, one for teachers. You get the idea. Even if your brand is based on this rudimentary scan of word density, looks like this, with everyone saying something different and everyone going off in their own direction to say this, this is chaos. This is a problem. This is the path to good, because no one can come up with an overall better descriptor. So how do you actually tell if you're in a state of chaos or cohesion? You can use that rudimentary version, but you can also ask deeper questions. You can Google yourself and see what people say about you. You can figure out why media even talk to you. What do they ask you to quote on? Is it all around the same category? You can listen in online and in person. One of the best ways I love to do this is go to Twitter or Instagram or any of those and look up the hashtag your institution problems and see what shows up. It's also a great way to target people in an advertising campaign. Look at how other websites refer to you. What are they about? Not just what do they say? What are the names of your actual schools or programs? What do they say about who you are? Reddit is a great way to hear how people really talk about who you are. Another way that when we were back on campus, not during a pandemic, I love to just sit in common areas, very busy common areas, and listen to how people talked about our school. Or if you have the resources, you could do full-blown brand study or a full-blown poll. That's where we started. You could conduct a brand awareness or a reputation study that could all listen to this. The most important thing is that you start listening. So why do you think you ended up here? If you were one of the groups that said you're in that chaos state. When I ask people why they end up here, the reason usually ends up sounding something like, we are decentralized. We can't control the message. People have their own ideas. Stakeholders have their own agendas. Our budgets are too small, which is usually because you are decentralized and follow a project-based funding model, I'm guessing. Even when you are officially centralized, you don't control the message. The message is still and will always be decentralized. Centralization usually refers to expertise in systems or platform management, not branding, not communications, not influence. So centralizing isn't going to fix this. It may fix other things, but it's not going to fix centralizing the message. You will need a different solution. And that's what we realized. So if step one is to listen and figure out what people are saying about you and determining if you even have a problem, then let's get on to step two. Step two starts the healing process. You need to figure out how to replace the good with something meaningful. So before you can determine how to do it, you have to figure out what you want them to say. And you have to make sure it's realistic, it connects to what matters, and what do we already have some gains in. So let's walk through a little case study on how to do this. So I work at a culinary school, and not just any culinary school, as you'll see soon. So food comes up a lot at this school. I love it. Hence the burger analogy. So first you have to figure out, what do you want? Who is your audience and what issues do they have? What does your target market care about? What do people know about you? What's going on in the world that could get in your way? And lastly, what proof points do you have that you're good at any of this? So remember back to the intro story, the little brand that was misunderstood? Well, if I take out all the words that we already said were problematic, this is what we're left with. Technical, technology, short programs, short courses, innovation, business, engineering are the ones that stand out. So back to our burger. So in SAID's case, our desire is an industry solution. We want, and always have been, the solution for industry to come to when they're seeking talent for the future. Our target market, we know, has worked in industries such as oil and gas and hospitality and tourism, both of which are going through a massive transformation right now. We know that in our surrounding region, we have high unemployment or underemployment right now, pre-pandemic, but definitely since the pandemic. And our current demographic actually skews to self-esteem, which is our millennial population compared to our competitive set. However, we know that pragmatic puja, or Gen Z, is just coming into post-secondary these days, and there's opportunity there. The drivers, based on our brand study and our decline survey, we know that students make their decisions to come to post-secondary, at least come to SAIT, based on these 4 drivers: high quality instructors, graduates preferred by employers, programs are relevant to the real world, and hands-on practical experience. Current situation, I'm sure I don't have to go through this with any of you because you're living it as well, but obviously the pandemic has created a lot of ambiguity and angst. It's also created hardship for a lot of our prospective students and their families. There's high unemployment, there's debt across the country related to the pandemic, but even before that, and there's a lot of ambiguity given that our industry itself is going through a transformation on top of the pandemic. Positioning and awareness. Well, as you saw from the word cloud, from the little brand that was misunderstood, we are well known for trades, oil and gas, culinary, and good. But we are also known for technology and industry connections. And what proof points do we have right now that stand out as our top 3 to 5? We have a 91% career placement rate, which is one of the top in the country. We recently were announced as the #1 hospitality and tourism school in Canada, in the top 10 in the world. We are the 2nd business school in Canada, just next to U of T. And in the last year, we launched a new school for advanced digital technology and a new center for professional continuing education and professional studies. But what's SAIT's secret sauce? This is when we really get to what makes us unique. So you take your awareness plus proof point plus driver plus advantage or what makes you different plus what's in demand plus what you desire to be. And for SAIT, that's careers plus technology plus short program plus business and engineering. Yes, this is your unique selling proposition, but just stay away from the ones that everybody's going after, like jobs, hands-on, small classes, and definitely stay away from good. So how would this apply if I was at another school? Well, I thought about this. I thought about what would it have been if I was at Queen's still. Queen's, although they are changing and going through a transformation themselves, part of their secret sauce is their network. Queen's people hire Queen's grads, and that's well known, and they have a strong supportive network. They have the prestige. They're often referred to as Harvard of the North, and the student experience. Kingston is rated one of the top 5 university towns in the world. So you get a next to none university experience. Okay, so what if I was a smaller school? How would that apply? So Trent University. Well, their secret sauce, they give out more scholarships per student body than any other school that I know of. And they are welcoming and inviting. They're a close-knit school. Their classes are all small, but they don't use that as the way to talk about who they are. And they have very unique programs that very few other schools have in Canada. So step 3. So we've done step 1, which is listening. Step 2 is identify what you want to be known for. And step 3 is our 3rd and final step. We now know that you have a problem, a brand problem, and we know what you want the brand to be. So let's talk about how you get there, even in your decentralized environment. This is what we're trying to solve. If I went out and asked people what your brand stood for, they'd probably have all different things to say about it. And this is what a brand playbook or a strategic messaging framework can be used for. Instead of that, all of a sudden you start to see the messages overlap and you start to see some themes emerge. The objective of the messaging framework, or AKA the brand playbook, is to collectively amplify our institutional priorities and strengthen our brand and reputation in areas that matter to us. We can achieve this through the intentional use of a consistent tone, voice, and style across each of our channels and platforms. There are 5 components. I said 1, 5 components to the brand playbook. The first one is a quick start guide that introduces to people what is a brand playbook, why do you use it, what does it exist for. There's a style guide, and along within those, there's often a little introduction of the circumstances. What are the things that guided you to come up with these as your play? What's the research? What's the current appetite? What's the Maslow's higher needs of your target audience, for instance? In the style guide, you actually break down tone, voice, emotional appeal, style of the images, and so on. An important part for measurement is a landing page. So the idea is that over this time period that this brand playbook is in use, everybody points to the same landing page, which helps create a unified space or unified message. A one-page cheat sheet. This is something we learned later on after our second playbook. Is the full kit seemed overwhelming for people. So we give them a one-pager that they can print and put on their desk that just gives them the short and dirty of what to do. And then lastly, which was probably the most useful out of the whole thing, and I believe some people just started there and they didn't even read the others, but were folders of assets, whether that's B-roll for video or imagery or fonts overlays, for instance, that people can apply in their own settings. The difference between a brand playbook and a visual identity or a style guide is there's kind of 5 things we think. First is that toolkit and resources. We make sure that they have resources to apply it, not just the rules. It's the how-to. It is very temporal and responsive to what's going on in the current reality, so it can change. During the pandemic, since last April, we've actually had 3 of these in play. Typically, I don't think you need to move it that much, but people were going through so much change emotionally and physically, to be honest, that we changed it 3 times over the last year. It is actually putting it into action. So it's taking your visual identity or your style guide and putting it into action. And this is not about a logo or correct use of a logo or correct use of language. This is not about policing. This is conversational. This is how to take that and put it into conversation with your target audiences. So I've got some samples here. This is one of our cheat sheets, one of our early ones that or not early ones, but the one that just actually wrapped up. So this is the cheat sheet, the single pager. Notice here that we share the feelings you are trying to inspire, message appeals that are likely to have the best response for our audience at this time, the words and the hashtags we'd like people to use, image style and subject, and sample of what creative should look like or could look like. We mock up what a story or post could look like to show how it comes together for them. We use a combination of our own images and stock to give them options. We do a photo shoot for every playbook. We also take the same toolkit and apply it to our many different target audiences to show our users or stakeholders how it can work for every one of our audiences. For instance, this is targeting more of our corporate training or applied research audience versus our Con Ed or Gen Z. And we also show up how an ad could come together using this language as well. And this way we give, whether it's alumni relations, whether it's advancement, whether it is corporate relations, we are giving them the tools to also use this unified toolkit. So I am so glad that we are over this TP craze. However, we're not out of the pandemic yet. Fingers crossed soon. But how do you roll this out? So first, you have to socialize the idea. And that means before you even introduce the full toolkit and how it works and the brand playbook, it's important to talk about why you're doing this and the research that supports the need to do this. You need to collect materials that show that you have a problem, that you're in a state of chaos. You have to do your market research to determine what it is you want to be known for. What are you trying to change? You have to incorporate people's feedback. I don't think I have to tell you guys this. You guys are all experienced higher ed professionals, but people love to hear their own ideas. So make sure when you do socialize the idea and you do the market research to incorporate the feedback you've learned. You need to collect your existing assets. The first one we started all from scratch and it became quite expensive and labor intensive. But during that feedback stage, you could actually be collecting assets that support what you're trying to do. We actually created a tag within our DAM to actually call out the current playbook. Develop the playbook and the toolkit and then share. And we thought we'd be good there, but what we realized is we have to share it again and again and again. So we came up with a full comms plan to make sure that everybody knew when and where to use this. We rewarded use. The more creative the use, the more dense the use, and the more obvious the use, the more we rewarded it. We measured impact mostly by looking at that landing page, and then we updated it for the next round. And how do you know when it's up? Well, you can usually tell based on, especially that Maslow's hierarchy of needs, when do you think your target audience is going to move from one category to the next? You can always call it short if you realize that it's lost its wind. So back to the story about the brand that was misunderstood and known as good. Almost a year in, using our playbooks, this is what we have seen so far. I guess you've guessed by now that that little brand was SAIT. So almost a year in, this is what we've seen so far. This give up good for great is actually on my bookshelf right now. So we've seen our open house attendance. In the past, our highest attended sessions would be our trades. And this year, for the first time ever, our highest attended sessions were for our School of Information Technology. We've seen increased invitations to our SMEs on technology from various organizations across the province. I did do a media interview not too long ago, leading up to open house actually, and they did introduce us with trades in the name. If people are looking for a trade, what can they learn? But they focused most of the interview itself on our new programs, so that was a win. We've seen an increase in technology companies wanting to partner with us and to hire our students. We've seen schools actually use our assets in their student email newsletters and in their social media posts. In particular, we've seen deans use the assets we produced and the language we produced in their social media posts. We've seen increased cohesion between the units at SAIT that are decentralized, which include communications, advancement, and marketing. We've seen an increase from Gen Z audience, which is new for SAIT. And we've also seen faculty members actually using this in the language of their new program development. Doesn't mean we're done yet. This is still new and in its infancy. The real test will be as we update our brand study, if we really have made our secret sauce sing or not. We had to give up good, which is scary and still scares a lot of people, but to become great, you have to give up on good. Thanks very much. I hope you learned a little bit about how to create some cohesion in your decentralized institution. Thanks for joining me. Bye.